All right, welcome to the fifth rendition of our Thursday evening double feature lecture series here as part of Living the City. This is our second rendition online. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the entire curatorial team, which is Tatjana Schneider, the Green Isle, and myself, Lukas Feireis. And tonight are Bani Abidi and Jeppe Hein with us. I'm thrilled and excited to have both of you on board. To explain the context again, Living the City is an exhibition, a publication, and a program of events that talks about cities or urban environments, about people and its manifold stories. And against this backdrop, I'm particularly excited to welcome you two artists on board because you're both in many ways dealing with spaces or urban environments, with people and with storytelling. Both of you are based in Berlin for many years, yet come originally from Copenhagen, Denmark, and Karachi, Pakistan. Today, the setup is as usual. Each one of you gives a presentation of about 20 minutes, and then we have some Q&A. And this is kind of the plan for the evening. We will start tonight with you, Jeppe. And again, thanks for being on board today. You kindly asked to start because you're coming down with a cold, so the first talk is for you. Quick introduction to you. I've been following your work for ages, actually, but at least since 2004, since your work Distance in Aachen. To briefly describe your work, you're known for producing very experimental and interactive works that combine very different elements of like art and architecture and also technical interventions. They're usually notable for your use of humor in engaging always the viewer or spectator actually in the piece. So it's all about like a very lively dialogue between the experience and the perception of the people themselves and their surrounding space. In a way, you could almost say that the participation of the people is crucial for the completion of your works. So this set, the stage is yours, or actually the screen is yours, Jeppe. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I mean, with a nice introduction like that about my work, I don't even need to say that much. I just want to show a lot of works. But I combined some works, which I'm just trying to find here and share with you, and then I just go through a couple of works, and then I will talk a little bit about it while they're working. So this is like from 99 or 2000. It's one of the first work I ever did in Frankfurt at the Städteschule. They called Moving Wall number 1. And it was the first work I decided to sit on the bench. It was my studio corner. So you sit on the bench and this wall driving out because I had a motor on the back. And it just somehow contained, in a way, the way that the viewer was starting to be active. The viewer was starting to be participating in the artwork. And I got very focused and very admired to see how happy people got, how much communication that appears with these situations where the wall drove out. Then the last couple of years, I've been very interested in mirrors. The mirrors is a way of reflecting yourself, looking yourself in the mirror, but the mirror also reflecting the surrounding and adopting the surrounding into that. So this is a mirror maze in New York at the Brooklyn Bridge Park. And this is a piece I have in Norway called The Way to Silence. In a Norwegian landscape in a sculpture park where I used mirrors and water, bringing into the landscape, trying to use material-wise back again to New York, where the kid thinks it's an iPad, he can remove the image, which I think is quite funny. But again, what's going on when people interact with the work? Are you a part of the artwork? Are you the artwork, or where's the subject? Who's the object in a way? And here there is a bench, you're sitting down in Wolfsburg, and then slowly the smoke disappear in a way. It's coming out of the bench, so you somehow disappear a little bit in the cloud of smoke. It smells like a little bit crazy, like a discotheque. But the main thing is that you're sitting and looking at yourself in the mirror and then you disappear. At that show, which called This Way, I also did the bench, which was the second bench I did. Very serious guy, but you sit on the bench and relax, and then the second you're sitting there, the bench starts to move with you around in the space, driving in certain space. So somehow, when you're sitting on the bench, it's normally about reflecting about because you're tired, and then the second you sit down, it just starts to move, and you are taught down into the institution and the here and now again. At the Venice Biennale last year, I did outside some of the pavilions a lot of benches. Benches is for me a very clean word. It's like, where do you have benches in a social space? Where do you put them? How do you engage with people? At the moment, you're not allowed to sit that close right now, but it will appear again. This summer, I was opening up a piece very fast called that one. There was the mirror. It was so fast. A very big mirror in Norway. But here again at Brooklyn Bridge Park, water, creating spaces in between people. This was for the opening. It's like wall of architecture coming up and creating spaces that you can be a part of that. A lot of people and kids are playing, having fun, and they're not aware of that as an art piece, which is not for me that important. A commission in LaGuardia Airport was balloons. What is a balloon? Was an object hanging in the ceiling. It's going very too fast here, but here I'm just making a pause. Since 10 years, I had so much energy, and I was traveling and around the world so much, trying to run after everything I could do and I would like to have and see and be in the art world. And one day, 10 years ago, I crashed, and I had completely a burnout, I would say, but also mentally healthily. I had to stop completely for whatever I was doing in my life, trying to find love and acceptance outside myself around the world. And of course, you can't find it anywhere. You can look for it in your own heart. And then slowly I start to find that. I stopped almost 2 years to work, but I start to paint again. I start to do these small watercolors of lines, trying to connect my breath within my mind and my body to control. With your breath, you can control it. So, and then I start to do these watercolors, which is just like kind of a map trying to control. One thing I also have is like I have a slack line where that time I didn't work so well, but it's again trying to find the balance in your life, which is like I have a second studio, which is in Grunewald, a small half house where I can disappear from the studio where everything is going on, and there's lots going on. Here there's an invisible labyrinth, which is again, you're coming into an empty space and you have this headset on, you're moving around, and certainly you feel the vibration in an invisible wall, and you have to go back, and this way you can turn to the left and to the right, and you navigate. And every day you can change, or I change the form so people have a different experience of this empty space in a way. One of the things I discovered in my life, but also is like, don't expect anything, be open for everything. It could almost come from India, but it's somehow a way of dealing with life and be very open for what's going on. And this is from my studio. I do these mirror boxes where I have light inside, and then I have this different neon bended in behind, so you see yourself in the object, but you are. Who are you? Why are you here? And where are you going in your life? I think one of these are the most important questions actually right now, to look into the mirror, because we are at the pandemic time of our life, which I think would be one of the most important years of our life in general. When we look back, we are forced to look into ourselves and finding out our values, which way are we going, and where are we heading, and how do we create and change, because we can't only change ourselves. If I'm standing on my t-shirt, you can't only change yourself, and this is what's it all about. This is like a piece of breathing. So you're standing there and you're breathing in. When you're breathing in, you're following the lines of breathing now and inhaling. And when you're breathing out, you're exhaling and you're breathing out again. So this was kind of a way how you pretend to help you guiding the breathing, because it's very complicated. Here you can see this is like what I did for 10 years ago, but I've been doing it ever since. Breathing in, and then in the exhale, I'm doing this line. As long as you exhale, you do this line. And I did thousands of those lines. It became very big lines on walls. And last year, in September, I did this big project called Breathe With Me. And I did it first at the United Nations, together with everyone came into this climate summit. And I did it at the Central Park, a very big installation where 3,000 people came and was showing somehow their breath, but also connecting. You see, this is the walls, 6 of those waves was painted. And we have a lot of school kids. It was all about communicating, all about showing and feeling your breath, but also feel connected. And I painted then first at the United Nations with politicians, young climate activists, Indian from the Amazon, and also people just came by because they're seeing it. And this woman had lung cancer for 1 year ago, and she got somehow saved by her for different things. So she wanted to come and give a statement about being part of this project. That's why she gave me a hug, which was of course very, very real. Then there was Michael Bloomberg and people like that at the United Nations, of course, who's doing a lot from the climate. It's also, we are breathing the same air in. Umina Mohammed, which is I think one of the Mother Earth of the world, which is like the United Nations mother of the global goals. And so here again, someone from Burma and the Indian guy who had never been outside the Amazon. So there was all these people coming, making a statement about breathing. And she's just saying right now that she's always took the breath for granted, and she's never been taking so much care about it in her life before. So that was very fast somehow, but also again, just to show and throw out in a way. I think I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. And with my work in the galleries, in the public space, in the museums, and always try to communicate, of course, which I think all art are doing, but I try to inspire people. I don't try to learn anyone anything. I'm trying to give it out to a question about who are you and where are we going in our life. And if I can inspire people with just finding out that how does my breath actually feel right now? Because a lot of people don't think about it. Then, of course, I did a very, very small thing maybe in life and maybe also in the world. And especially, of course, then after my project at the United Nations, then that happened in February, January, March, the Corona came, the lockdowns. Then we have I Can't Breathe with George Floyd. And so all the year has been in focus of breathing, in the focus of depending on how can you breathe as a person, as an individual, as a united, a unit, and to be open for everything in the world. And I think what happened last week with the election, although it was a good, how do you say, it was again a sign that there is things positive in the world, and a lot of people would like to share their love with the rest of the world. And I think there was a very nice statement to get in last Wednesday, or this weekend actually, to hope for that what we're all working for in a way, to try to unite it and to find out that we are all in the same and we are breathing the same air. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Jeppe. Maybe we can pick up on that. On your last sentence, that you kind of we all breathe the same air. I mean, that's the central point, I guess, of your breathing works that you ended with now. That kind of shows the connections between all of us, and that's in many ways what your work before was also about. In a way, it's you're an advocate of empathy. I would say, like looking at it from the outside, and whether it's through these sculptures that are kind of the benches that suddenly start moving, or your modified social benches, but they're all encouraging an interaction, and they're all trying to like literally touch people. Your work is not like a white cube work, but it's a work that is directly engaging with the audience, asks for participation, and like in a way not only that touches the people, but asks them to engage with the space that they're in, but actually also with one another. At least that's my experience. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this one? Yeah, but I think that
how do you say, I worked for several artists before. I'm a skilled carpenter, so I worked for several artists, and one of Olafur, I worked for him in early 90s a lot, and I got very inspired. Well, some of his work was very emotional in the sense that it touched your body. It was like a rainforest or something like that. It touched your skin, and I got very admired about. I think it's also about Denmark. We are very social, and how do we work as a person, and how we are as a person, as a country in a way, but also how we've grown up and how we are teach to be very social democratic in our way of thinking, in our way of being. And so I thought a lot about how can you use that in a way to combine, because we are so different in cultures. And you can see when you work with a bench, if you have a normal bench, just a normal one, and you sit there on the bus stop here in Germany or in Denmark, not a lot of people will sit next to you on this bench. But would you be in Pakistan or India or in South Spain, then there would be like 10 people sitting on the bench and using it, because the personal private room are so different between us. In how close can you get in our private room? I think in India they don't really have a private space in a way of, but if you are in north of Scandinavia, it's 30 centimeters. If you are closer than that, that's a little bit too close for me. So I found it very interesting to see how can you with a tool for communication, but also play, and play is sometimes linked to have fun, or have a link to have an open heart and forget a little bit your comfort zone. And when you start to play, you're forgetting this comfort zone, and then you start to communicate, and then also you open up your heart. And although depending on who is around you, you start to communicate with them. Also, if they are beautiful people with different color eyes and different skin and different opportunity background, and then you're forgetting a little bit about that and actually learning something without knowing that. And I think that this is what art can do. Art have a language which is not spoken, and I think this is very, very valuable, especially the time which we have right now this year, how much we're using the culture. And think about if we didn't have culture or art the last half a year, I think there would have been more fights at home, but also more fights around, because with poet, movies, music, literature, books, everything has just been, we have been focused on so much learning and so much getting to use the time. And I think, yeah, so I don't know if it's a long answer, but kind of a way of thinking.
Yeah, and speaking of learning, and you mentioned Olafur before, or other artists, you're often mentioned as an artist who is in a kind of a lively dialogue also with traditions in contemporary art, such as like minimalist sculpture or like conceptual art from the 70s. And the work that we have on show in the currently closed exhibition, Living the City, is one of your modified social benches. And I always understood it, and I guess that's what my question is, as a direct reference to kind of Joseph Beuys' idea of the social sculpture, which your work very much is in line with. So that any artwork or any sculpture is always a social sculpture, or has always also a social impact on people and society. Am I right in thinking so?
Yeah, that's also why I think it's so interesting for me to place or to go outside the white cube or the museum context, because there you don't have the protection, but also not the frame about protecting, that people approach the work or the artwork completely different if it's outside, because they don't know it's art and they don't need to know. But if you create this kind of boundary opening up for people, in between people, I think then I achieved a little bit in my life. And I think this is what I think is very important, is as an artist to inspire.
Cool. So thanks, Jeppe, for your introduction. To keep with the time and to keep it nice and flowing, I would say we move to you now, Bani. And you also prepared a little film for us, Bani. Also, I'm very thankful that you are with us today. I first came across your work actually in 2014 at the Berlin Biennial. You showed a work called Funland Karachi series. But similar to Jeppe, you are also working with humor in your works. You are known in particular for your very distinctive and I think very poetic approach to filmmaking and also to photography, sound installation, and sequential drawings. And throughout your very diverse artistic body of work, you tend to discuss very often mechanisms of control and of power. Mm-hmm. Here, humor comes into the game in a way as a way of negotiating these often like difficult political global realities, yeah, that at the same time are equally absurd. So you are in many ways an experimental storyteller that picks up on the absurdities of ordinary everyday life and also often work as an urban archaeologist. So thereby always questioning somewhat like dominant narratives, whether they come from the state or whether they're politically different, whatever they are. But there's a playful questioning of dominant narratives throughout your work, with always a tone of humor and a sensibility for the absurdity of everyday life. So that said, the screen is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually show just one work of mine, because I think that it's from 14 years ago, but it's short. It's a fictional film. It's 9 minutes long. I'll just show 4 or 5 minutes. But why I'm choosing to show that is because it's about something, an event that's happening in the city. So it's very contextually very pertinent. And I went to great lengths to produce it. So it seems apparently that it's something that is just taking place and it's a documented event, but it's actually a fictional film. I will now share screen. So what we are looking at, the work that I'm going to be talking about and showing is actually a 2-channel installation. And these are just some installation shots of it from my show at the Gropius Bau last year. And hopefully it'll give us enough material, around which we can discuss my general approach to what I do. And I'll just read a bit because I wanted to just collect my thoughts. So, so one of my favorite filmmakers, Elia Suleiman, a Palestinian living in New York, frequently talks about the act of sitting and watching life unfold in cities he lives in or travels to. Waiting in bus stops, at cafes, in the waiting rooms of clinics and government offices, slowly observing, gleaning. His films, although very planned in their narrative and intention, feel like they're a compilation of vignettes, which have been drawn from years of notes about quotidian urban life and inconsequential characters. There's always a small moment, an incident, an act which converses with another and another till some sort of narrative starts emerging. A bottom-up approach of telling a story, if you will. His films taught me how to interpret the poignancy of seemingly ordinary moments. So the film I'm going to show, Reserved, was the first film I was ever commissioned to make in 2006 with a budget of $10,000. It was commissioned by the first Singapore biennial that had been launched in the city state as a mega cultural event to accompany the annual meeting of the World Bank and the IMF that was being hosted by the Singapore government that year. So this premise, the anticipation of waiting for something major to happen in a city, struck a very deep chord. And I decided to make a film about a city which is waiting for a very important person, a VIP, to arrive. This was far from a literal interpretation of an event like this in my experience. It was more about the multitudes of small moments when us, the citizens of Karachi, had found ourselves stuck at a loss, waiting, helping each other get through some bureaucratic process or the other, or some inefficiency of our very callous and corrupt state. A state which was seemingly there to rule over, extract from us, but not serve us. The city became then, and then continued to be in my later work, the city became a stage where we all came together in our unwitting subservience, outside the privacy and exclusivity of our homes, from wealthy and not so wealthy lives to encounter each other. And here's where, in these moments of extended waiting, we would, for a brief moment, become citizens and allies with a common objective. Here is where the cyclical, recurring moments of anxiety, tiredness, and impatience themselves became replete with new possibilities and relationships. So I'm going to show you the film, and then I'm going to talk about the making of it and why the ability to read cities is really important for me, and why sometimes I feel at a bit of a loss in a place like Berlin, where I don't have an intuitive relationship. So what does it mean to understand the grammar and culture of public life? So we will see the film, and I will show just observed from the film, rather than going through shorter excerpts, is because, of course, the way I work generally is that I just linger on details. And so there is some of the element of the audience, even if I'm sharing it in a presentation, it is important for people to just stay at a particular pace and observe things that are happening, because there is no narrative per se that's playing out. In this work, for instance, the video is a constant loop. There is the smaller screen with the VIP motorcade driving by and the people waiting, and it just keeps on rotating in perpetuity. It never ends. But of course, for me, all of this is, when we talk about humor, it is about, in this case, it's an incredibly simple nuances which come from memory. And memory in that way of being in cities is really important, of actually being stuck in situations, of being stuck in traffic jams. What you see right now is a storyboard that I did before the film, in which everything is planned to the detail. So the man picking his ear while he's bored, or the family with a motorbike with lots of people on it. These are all pre-planned things, or people sharing cigarettes while waiting. So that kind of, there is a certain kind of relationship formation that happens in a public space that I'm very interested in observing. And I think even here, when I'm on the bus, these kind of anecdotes or incidents are very central to my work and the way I develop it. So this is all, it was completely pre-planned. I produced the whole thing. For instance, the kind of absurdity that comes in, and I really like mocking power. And recently I've started saying that there is a certain agency to laughing at people who feel they have control on you. In my case, the state, or petty officers who are trying to be, holding forth on something and controlling you in some ways as a citizen of a city who's trying to get some work done. So the men in coats wearing these badges, for me, are memories of all these men who just, put on a little badge here and thrust out their chest, and suddenly they were more important than they had ever been. So it's also the characterization of certain kind of people one encounters in civil society, and what are the forms of, what are the power relations that exist there. These are the children who are being made to wait. Interestingly, this film has been very popular in the times that I've shown it in Eastern European countries. I think this whole relationship where the state is oppressive, but solidarities are found with other people is maybe something that is is a common theme. And that's me shooting, actually, the film. That's 14 years ago now. And that, I think, films that, and talking about myself being a female filmmaker in the city, me wanting to fictionalize very normal, mundane details about everyday life is because I'm a control freak and I want to make it get that precise moment. But it also gives me a lot of freedom to reinterpret it, and also not to be such a visible character, being a woman, an upper class woman filming in the streets of Karachi. As you can see in this film, look at it's quite formidable trying to shoot a film like this with the kind of audiences that one gathers. So there is certain level of control that I have. This is the traffic jam scene. There were very few cars, actually. But the way it transpired as we were shooting the film, lots of other people just came and joined the traffic jam just for the heck of it, because there was a film being shot. So it became quite a wonderful, organic traffic jam, and things happen in it which I hadn't even storyboarded. This is like these kind of moments which are really important to me, is that when people are moving homes and that the trucks, the vans that they carry it in are open. So very often you see beds and chairs, an entire home packed into one big truck. And so this was all the furniture, some furniture from my house that I felt was important to have in the traffic jam, and these people just sitting on it. So these kind of moments that get created. This is just these are the guards with fake plastic guns. And these are the kids. And the kids again were very wonderful to work with, because these are situations which is about boredom and waiting. People actually became quite bored in the shoot themselves. So it became, they started acting and doing things which were completely suited to my narrative. So yeah, I think I'm coming to an end, and I think it would be, Lucas, it will be fun to discuss some of the questions that you had earlier in relationship to humor, and take what you've seen further.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there we go, I stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bani. And it's nice, we can kind of try to wrap it up together in a way. But the beauty with this work, and actually waiting is a theme that runs through your oeuvre, no? The Funland work I mentioned, no, sorry, not the Funland, the distance from here is a work that's all dedicated to waiting as well. But what I found beautiful on the example that you just showed, how you, by having these people kind of wait for this VIP person that nobody knows, it's kind of a take on waiting for Godot in a way. You work also on how this is a power relation, an important person comes, how these power relations translate into the spaces that the people are waiting in. And also actually, that's beauty, the psychology of waiting, no? And the gestures and how people are kind of start to organize themselves, and how the people, they become almost like obedient bodies for something unknown that's coming.
Yes.
No, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that so a lot of my other work after this has to do with security architecture. So there's a whole series of security barriers that I documented as drawings that exist on the streets of Karachi. But it is, of course, it is really fabulous. And also just the way post 9/11, like travel rules have made us just completely comply all the time. And with the going of Tegel, it is kind of an era gone where we moved very differently in space through countries when we came in. And now, of course, the entry into a new country is very formidable for anyone coming in from outside. But yeah, so I am very interested in how security architecture, like barriers and scanners and all of that, started being used in the past 15 years by different forms of people, by different groups of people, by governments, by rich against the, sort of containing neighborhoods, securing their houses and intercoms. So there is, and there's always the person who's kind of fumbling and breaking those lines and breaking those rules. So I'm also interested in the characters that don't comply. And the ones who are, fearful and do comply. So these kind of negotiating of architecture is interesting. I mean, I remember one of my biggest things about moving to live in Chicago was that there were enormous sidewalks, and everyone used sidewalks for the purpose they were meant for. They used a Platz for the purpose it was meant for, and everything was used for the purpose it was meant for. And then I'm from Karachi or to Calcutta, and it's up for grabs. You can do lots of things with lots of public spaces because it's not so easy to enforce rules, and people also don't abide by modern urban spaces in a similar manner. So I was always interested in how a man could have just washing his hair and somebody else cutting hair and third person selling food so close to each other, and that's kind of charming because it is kind of, it's the non-abiding body.
And you acting then as a very, let's say, attentive observer of these urban environments and trying to find these absurdities in the ordinary. You just mentioned Chicago, you live in Berlin, you're from Karachi, you lived also in India. Have you kind of translated these observations also from places like Chicago or Berlin, or is it mainly forward coast? Because a lot of your work deals with the kind of neighboring states of India and Pakistan.
Well, a lot of my earlier work was about that, about Pakistan and India and the border. But I mean, I do work in Pakistan and India. I understand things in a very much more intuitive way. Then I'm able to laugh at it much quicker. And here it's still, I feel that living in a new place completely, especially where I don't understand the language, is purely intellectual at this point. So that it takes some more time. It'll take me a bit more time to develop an intuition about the city. But of course, there are things happening. I'm very interested in, for instance, these days, I'm very interested in the voices of singers, of like people singing in different voices in Berlin, in sounds and different languages, and what you hear, Skype conversations that young people have from other parts of the world while walking around DM or something. So of course, there's something that grabs me, but there's an abundance of things that grabs me when I go to Karachi, because that's just like years of internalized observations that just get, fermented well enough.
And maybe I would like to kind of now really wrap up our kind of meeting here in 3 with kind of referring to one another and the observations that I'm made kind of looking at both of your works. I mentioned before that humor is kind of a common denominator in both of your works, but I believe also that both of you turn everyday things or situations or phenomena into something new, or you change the perspective of things. So you look at things that you usually take for granted in a new light, whether it's waiting or whether it's breathing, or or whether it's a security fence or it's a mirror or a bench. And thereby actually you're playing, like theatrically speaking, you would speak of a Verfremdungseffect, like the alienation effect in Bertolt Brecht's like approach to theater, that basically you're like literally making things strange so that the observer becomes more of a participant and kind of can more consciously and critically look at these things. So this is what I see as the kind of red thread connecting your 2 works that are very, very different aesthetically, formally speaking, but I think in this kind of conceptually and methodologically speaking, there's a connection.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're both quite, even Jeppe's work is really minimal in that. My work is also very minimal, even though there's a different form of telling a story. But like I said, I mean, there's nothing much that happens. So it is the familiar narrative. In this case, people are watching it. And suddenly you realize nothing is happening, but something very sweet happens or very small happens that brings a smile to your face and you move on. And I think the same goes for Jeppe's work. It's seemingly familiar, but something happens that makes you think differently.
Yeah, I also think that it was very nice to see, and I wanted to see the whole thing, that's for sure, your movie, but was wondering when they ever arrived, the VIP or not. But I was very, I laughed a lot. There was not a microphone on, but I actually laughed a lot because I think I've been living in India, but the culture is just so with the car key in the ears and so on. You will never see a German guy who do that, but they would take something else, I think. But I
would they take a Q-tip? Would they fish for a Q-tip at the right moment? No, they might use the car key.
Yeah, no, but I just like these small moments. I can definitely see whatever these dialogues opening up these small things in every person in your work as well, and linked to memories of something. When you are then going with your car key next time, I will think about maybe I should try to scratch my ear. No, but just like these small everyday life as blink to open up for something new. And I think there was I definitely have my moments in your movie which I will bring to my everyday life, that's for sure.
Thank you.
I realized another fun connection is one of your like more recent works. Jeppe is in the airport, like LaGuardia, I think, in New York, where you have these like your balloons in the waiting. Basically, while you're queuing and waiting, you have an installation of these balloons that are seemingly stuck on the wall, where you kind of pass by and wonder, like, is this like an artwork, or did someone forget a balloon there? So it plays actually also with the psychology of waiting and queuing and what happens to you, and you kind of usually break the situation with a smile, with a humorous win, which you do too, Bani, in yours. And there's so anyways.
But I think the interesting difference is that there's a bit of in Jeppe's work, there's a bit of the magician, the artist magician, who does something that is actually not going to happen, and that is like displaces and is funny for somebody, and it's a different kind of humor. And mine is the opposite, which is actually finding, not the opposite, but it's actually finding the humor in the uber real in that way. It's highly hyper real in that, you know, the picking, these are all characters who are real. So it's interesting how it's equally amusing and surprising, and only brings a smile, not laughter, to our faces, but just brings a light smile. But they're both different approaches to subverting that space.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And there's actually also a level of exaggeration in both of your cases. So you said it's hyper real or uber real what you're doing, but as you said, it's all like stage, it's all play acting. It seems totally ordinary, because let's say the observation starts with the ordinary life, but then you again retransform it. That's where the alienation effect comes into the game, and then it becomes the hyper real, because it's actually like play acting, posturing, exaggerating that situation. And in a way, that's what you're doing too. You're exaggerating the idea of a bench, you know, or what are the possibilities, the spaces of possibilities that like a bench or a water fountain could have. So I really, I'm very inspired by kind of thinking about your two works and this connection and what they do to us, and as an observer in the urban environment too, no? We kind of, it sharpens our perspective while walking through the city, you could say. And engaging with one another. No, it's also really about people, how they move together, come together. I mean, I could go on forever. Maybe it's enough for today. I was also just thinking of your work, Jeppe, which you did in the König Gallery, where there was basically no artwork, but people over a month did every day a different performance. So where this is a very bold statement of saying the artwork is the people. And that's basically what you're doing there too. Bani was saying, well, the artwork is actually the ordinary people. And the postures.
Like at König Gallery, the exhibition was called "Don't Explain Anything, Be Open to Everything." But the idea was that people didn't know what's going on, and they came into the big space there, and it was empty most of the time. And I made several exercises with them and did small things, kind of funny yoga exercises, screaming and dancing and stuff. And then, of course, also what happened was that I started to challenge them their personal private space to open up between each other. So what they brought with them out of the 1 hour, 1.5 hours we were together was an experience, was a feeling or experience of something which I tried to guide. But people are not allowed to bring any photos or cameras on, so we only have photos from above. So I know there was like 1,500 people there, but I mean, it was a funny show for 4 weeks because I never heard about it after that. But it was a very big experience for me, and I will do a very big show in 2 years, like 1.5 years, in the Moderna Museum in Stockholm, where I'm using a lot of those tools of way of communicating. Yeah, that's true.
So closing off, Bani, you have to take your son to bed. We're trying to keep it in time. Jeppe, thanks so much, despite you're coming down with a call to be with us here tonight. If I try to kind of give a closing sentence, I think what we can learn from both of your works and approaches is to sharpen all of our senses to the strangely familiar in our surrounding environments, in our surrounding spaces, with a smile on our face. So that's it.
I hope to see you again.
The exhibition.
But also at the show, of course.
Yeah,
and the same here. So we all cross fingers that we can open in December again, and then we'll reunite in person and have a tour. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to the audience online for being with us, and I wish you all a wonderful evening.